Welcome to the White Collar Advice channel. I'm here with my good friend, fellow Trojan, fellow athlete, Owen Hansen, and we're going to have a different perspective on this huge NBA scandal from two dudes who went to jail and see it a little bit differently. So, Owen, cocaine quarterback, before we get into this scandal, can you give us like a moment or two of who you are and what's happening right now in your life?
Yeah, Justin, I just got out of federal prison. I spent nearly the last decade behind bars. I was arrested in 2015 on a federal indictment for racketeering of illegal gambling, bookmaking, and distribution of narcotics and money laundering. Before that, I was a two-time national champion at USC under Pete Carroll, where I got my degree in public policy and management, later becoming one of the largest bookmakers in America.
Talking about bookmakers, I know our friend Matthew Boyer, currently in prison, would love to be part of this discussion, and someday he'll watch it and be jealous that he wasn't here. Instead, he's in prison, so we're thinking of Matt. Now, like so many people in this indictment, Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, Damon Jones, I presume you never imagined it would be your name versus the United States of America. You said something in your incredible doc on Amazon, Cocaine Quarterback, that when you got caught that golf course, I don't want to give it away, everyone should watch the doc, there was a sense of relief. Do you think when Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, and Damon Jones, presuming they plead guilty or are convicted, do you think there's a sense of, I'm glad I got caught? Walk us through that mindset.
No, not at all. These are athletes. We're competitors, right? And as an athlete, as you know, you in the beginning, you think you're untouchable. You think that any kind of money that you make, you can pay people off. You're never going to get in trouble. Maybe right now he's thinking, oh, I'll get a good lawyer and I'll get off this thing and maybe pay a fine and be done. Because when you're at that level as a competitor like myself, as an athlete, you feel like you can do anything. You're Superman.
I want to talk about, I have not had any experiences with the mafia. This is primarily white collar crime type stuff, but I know in your case, there was experience with the cartel. And can you help us understand like how that happens? And is there any contemplation like, I don't want to do this anymore, but you can't leave? Understand the mindset of working with these organizations.
The problem is once you go down that road of illegal activity, it's really hard to get out of that rabbit hole. And mine started with bookmaking. I was a bookie, and I kept chasing that rush. And eventually, I got so big, I started taking bets from the cartel, unbeknownst to me, through one of my sub bookies. These people are so powerful. They have so much money and so much wealth. They're literally able to do anything and everything to convince you to work for them. I remember the cartel offered me 10% to pick up $1 million cash in Texas. I was 26 years old at the time. Who's not going to say yes to picking up $1 million and making $100,000 in one day? And I remember that task was so easy for me. And I picked up that $100 million and I made that 100 grand. I'm like, wow, that was pretty simple. But that was just to get me into the door to launder, tens of millions, 20 of millions, of the cartel's money, eventually ending up smuggling cocaine into Australia for them because they have so much control that they just dangle the carrot. And it's hard to say no to them because it keeps getting higher and higher. And eventually I was making $1 million a day working for them.
I know in my case, I made a couple of bad decisions, and then you kind of get immune to making some bad decisions and you rationalize it's okay, you're not getting caught. Maybe this is the culture. Do you think as we break down like this massive indictment that part of their decision making was it's not that big a deal, people are gambling, this is a break from the monotony of what my day-to-day life is? Help us understand how people making tens of millions of dollars could potentially cross the line, risk their freedom, their family, for pennies on the dollar. Like, how could this happen?
I feel they don't think they're going to get caught. You got to remember gambling's legal in 38 states. So at the end of the day, maybe they think it's just a slap on the wrist. But anytime you're involved with organized crime, you got more eyes on you. The FBI is looking at organized crime more than they're looking at, these NBA players. And there was probably something that they were watching with these five families from New York, and next thing they know, they see, these NBA coaches and players that are involved, and they're like, wait a minute, we got something a little bigger. And it's a feather in the FBI's cap to be able to take down the five families with these professional athletes. So obviously they're going to go hard.
Well, they love the headlines, of course. I mean, even having the FBI director do a press release or press conference, they don't do that a lot. So this advances their career. They did it like right on the eve of the season opening up. I thought that was fascinating. Craig Carton, who's a talk show host in New York, someone my company worked with before he went to prison for 41 months, talked about how there's kind of a stigma with gambling addiction, right? If you're an alcoholic, if you're a drug addict, there's an addiction. And he speaks at length about gamblers too having an addiction. It's like a sickness. Do you think that could play into part of how someone making so much money could cross the line for so little? They're dealing with a terrible addiction.
No doubt that we're I tell people we're action junkies, right? We want that action, and as an athlete, you want to win, right? We've been winning our whole lives, and there's nothing better to win, whether it's competing, playing in sports or betting on sports. And obviously these guys were rigging the games with the prop bets, and obviously the poker tables where they had certain special glasses to read the cards. Anytime you have an edge like that, it makes winning so much more easy, right? So it's like a guarantee for them. So it's like, okay, let's throw $250,000 on this under, because we know I'm gonna go leave 9 minutes into the game.
I'll tell you, in my experience, when I got caught, there was a sense of an immediate recognition of like how good I actually had it. And it's easy when you're committing a crime, like you want more, there's some excess, you don't appreciate it. Then it gets removed from you and you're like, wow, I had it so good. Do you think right now, considering you had a coach and players, the immediate thought is, what have I done? I had it so good. I worked so hard to get here. What do you think the mindset is seeing their name in papers all around the world?
Definitely, they're thinking that. Listen, you and I both have lived nice lives before we were incarcerated. I'll tell you what, when I was in that 6x8 prison cell, there's not a day that went by that I thought about just like having that Equinox gym pass where you can go and get a massage and get a nice workout and shower and be able to use all these nice amenities and go to your Beverly Hills house or the country club, all these things these professional athletes have. And now all the shame and embarrassment to their families and their team and the NBA. This is just going to become an epidemic, and I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see a lot more coming.
I know when a government investigation starts, one of the first thing the FBI can ask you if you proffer or go in and meet with them, or they could ask this to the lawyers, is there anything you'd like to tell us? And I know in my case, it took like a full year before I learned that my co-defendant had been working with the feds and cooperating. Besides the people named in this indictment, like how many people in the country right now who are a part of this are worried and just wondering, oh my God, are they going to come and get me at 5 a.m.? Isn't that the hardest part, the waiting and wondering?
Oh, the worst. I'm sure that's what a lot of people in my case thought, right? Like it's just a matter of time when they have a confidential informant or a federal informant. There's two types of people in the feds. There's people that wish they cooperated. They say there's two types of people. What's the saying? They say there's people that cooperated and there's people that wish they cooperated, because in the feds, you're going to be screwed if you don't give them information. You're going to get put away for a long time, and they scare you, right? The FBI, that's their job, to scare you. So they're going to these guys that they have working with them, and you'll never know they're working with you until you take it to trial. And sometimes 99% of the time, people don't take it to trial, so you're never going to know who's cooperating against you. But they have informants, and there's guys right now, probably in the NBA, maybe on coaching staffs, maybe players, that probably got tipped off. The FBI came to them and said, hey, we're going to put you away for a very long time, or you're going to help us with this investigation. And that's what's going on right now. And I can guarantee you there's going to be a lot more bigger names that are going to come out. And these guys that they've already arrested, they're going to be talking about players, coaches, different people that are involved in organized crime in order to reduce their sentence.
Well, that's interesting. You mentioned the sentencings. Unlike, I'm not saying what Matthew Boyer didn't do was severe, but in the bookmaking, he got a year and a day. And in this case, we're talking about fraud, especially through these poker games, $7 million. In the white collar crime world, the sentencing guidelines they really can go through the roof here. We're looking at, I'm not saying a year and a day or 2 or 3 years isn't real time. You did real time. How long was your sentence again?
My real sentence was 255 months and then eventually got reduced to 12 and a half years. So I think that's,
Yeah, so that's a really long time. A year and a day
yeah.
is different. When I hear 7 million in potential guidelines, you have Chauncey Billups going from a Hall of Famer and coach. It could be 5, 6, 7 years in prison if convicted. Walk us through the mindset of preparing for a potential really long federal prison sentence.
You know, you're literally you sit in, you hope you get bail, right? But in my case, I didn't get bail, unfortunately. And the whole time, all you're thinking about is that day you get sentenced, and it's the worst feeling in the world. You just want it to end. I know Matt Boyer had this issue. You could have dragged it out for an extra 3 years, but it's the unknown that kills you, and it eats you up. I remember sitting in my federal prison cell for 2.5 years before I finally pled guilty and took this deal of 21 and a half years. And the whole time, I'm just literally sick to my stomach every day, just wondering what the outcome's going to be. And you're just, my advice is just get it over with, right? Get in, get out, do as best as you can with your legal team, your advisors like yourself, and utilize anything you could do to make the judge see that you're a human being and that you did make a mistake.
If they do plead guilty or are convicted and go to prison, what is the how are people like them approached, right? You have a Hall of Fame athlete, celebrity. How do you think they would be approached uh, in federal prison?
Most likely they're going to have to put them on, I would say, a special yard somewhere that's a high profile yard, similar to a yard I went to. We had guys like Jared Fogle from Subway there. We had um, ex mob bosses, ex FBI's.
Can you tell us a little more? So, can you tell us a little more about that? Because a lot of people watch the White Collar Advice channel, thankfully, end up in a minimum security camp. Not all. Some go to lows. We've had some mediums, but it's usually where I was serving time, dude. Standing for count in a camp with no fences or barbed wire.
Yeah.
You can walk off at any time. They're not stopping you. And for so many people, like who go to the camp for a short sentence, it's like the camp experience could be the easiest part because at least it's clearly defined with a beginning and an end. You're coming home pretty soon. Like the process of waiting to go to prison can be much harder. I did not serve time in a low, thankfully. My partner Michael did 26 years, as you know, including time in a low. Can you help us understand like the low security prison and what you just mentioned, like a different yard, Fogel, FBI guys? That seems kind of volatile. What's that like?
Yeah, it just depends on the charge, and there's certain there's a point system when you get sentenced, and based off your security level, you could be at where I started at United States Penitentiary Lompoc, which actually at the time was a medium, and then eventually when you earn good time or your time gets less, you go to a low, and then from a low you could go to a camp. Guys like this most likely would be going to a camp, and they say it's the country club. Listen, it's still prison. I don't care. You're away from your family. You're eating crap meals. It's nowhere anywhere anyone wants to go to at the end of the day. I know I've talked to Matt's wife and she says he's just hating it. But yeah, of course, that's what happens when you break the law. You go to prison and you're not supposed to get treated like you're at a country club. It's not going to happen. But you make the best of it. And like you said, there's different outcomes. You could go to low just depending on your time, your charge. If you're a sex offender, you're never going to go to a camp because you're not allowed to be at a prison.
Unless you're Ghislaine Maxwell, but that's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the reality that if given an opportunity to cooperate, because in so many cases people cooperate, but nobody knows. But the fallout, because look, the FBI, when they say it's 7, 10, 11 years in prison, but if you give us this, it's going to be much less. That really changes things, right? So do you think they'll be given the up? Do you think we'll see some of these cooperation types agreements, people rolling over on other people, or some people just say, look, I'm going to maintain the line? And what are your thoughts on what happens?
I would say 99% of these people are going to cooperate. You got to remember they're going to be scared out of their mind. Um, they're going to scare them with that, like you said, 7 years, 10 years. I mean, some of these people don't have that in them, right? And at the end of the day, you're trying to get back to your family as soon as possible. And if you're able to give an information on the Lucchese family, and if we convict this guy, we'll let you walk. Guess what? They're going to give up that information. But I would say that we're going to start seeing deals happening right away. And usually, once a deal's accepted, that means they go into this agreement to work with the prosecutor, right?
It is interesting how quickly, like the Shohei investigation wrapped up, like with baseball, 1 or 2 days. And I'm a Dodger fan. We got seats. I love them. But that wrapped up in like 2 days. And this has been going on for many, many years. It's hard not to argue there's some conspiracy theories going around or something. I want to I want to talk about acceptance. I watched your doc. It continues to do very well. You have said when you got caught, there was a thought of, okay, I can't, I'm caught now. The healing can begin. Was there a sense when you were in prison, while I'm here and it's hard, at least I'm going through this process of making amends? Like at some point, doesn't your life get better when you say, I'm sorry, I accept responsibility? I mean, didn't you do that at some point?
Yeah, no doubt. The day you accept responsibility is the day you finally can just breathe, right? I remember the judge sentenced me to 21 years and 3 months, and I looked at my dad, and everyone was just so sad. And I was just like, okay, now I can go about my life. Now I, Owen Hansen, have time to rehabilitate, right? That's why he did this. And I went to college. I got my master's degree. I wrote my book, The California Kid. I did this docu-series. I helped kids learn their GED, get their GED in prison. I just turned my mindset to saying, hey, the judge put me away to rehabilitate. Now it's time to do what he sent me for. And that's the mindset I feel that anybody that's going to prison needs to understand, that you fucked up, you messed up. You need to go in there and take it like a man and go do the time, and you're going to feel a lot better when you get out.
Well, let's talk about, well, you can do it like a man. It's hard on the family. So I know in the documentary you talk about the impact it had on your father. And what is the impact of a long prison sentence on wives and in children? I guess how can like a potential prisoner set the tone for them? Because it's very difficult on the family.
It's very difficult. My father and my wife at the time, now my ex-wife, she says, listen, when you're in prison, I'm in prison. She goes, I feel like I'm in prison knowing you're in prison, because listen, their whole life is turned upside down. My father, I would call, and just he would say, son, I wish I could go to the judge right now and ask the judge if I could do the time for you, because I'm this old man that has a couple of years left, and you're this young kid, you're 32 years old, and you have your whole life ahead of you. He goes, I don't like seeing this, and I feel like I'm in prison every day you're in there. So
Mhm.
parents and family members and wives and kids, they got to understand, like, this is going to be difficult, but if we all get together and we stay strong, we're going to get through it.
Something that I learned in prison, even a little bit through my own case, I had a lot of clients and friends who were professional athletes, primarily baseball players, teammates of mine from USC. And many of them eventually say, you know what, man, it's just a job, right? I'm grateful to make a lot of money and play on television, but in time, anything can become a job. Many of them, they lost interest. They weren't as engaged. They got a little bit bored. Do you think a part of it is the excitement of maybe committing some crime despite playing basketball and being a coach and having that life? Can't you get bored and perhaps this is just something new and exciting, a way to make a little money on the side and just do something a little different? We have to get at the root of how this someone who has $100 or $200 million contract can make a decision where they make a measly 100 or $200,000. We need to, as we get ready to wrap this up, I need more understanding how something like that could happen. I
It,
don't
it,
understand it.
it is boredom, and it's a different type of rush, right? For the coach, for example, he's been playing his whole life, and now he's a coach. Maybe he doesn't feel the same excitement, the same rush as he does as a player. He could have all the money in the world, but it's that type of rush that you feel, and you're chasing that rush, and it's just this euphoric feeling that you can keep winning and winning, knowing you have an edge.
Yeah, I certainly can understand that. If they were watching this, and this is covered so much, so everyone's going to have a different perspective, but I wanted to provide your perspective of someone who I served just 1 year. You had a very long sentence. You served a decade. You're home. You're going through your acclimation process. Like if they were watching this or their lawyer or a family member, what advice would you give to them as they're really going through the early stages of a government investigation? What would you tell them?
My advice is take your lawyer's legal advice from the rip. You don't say anything to authorities. You keep your mouth shut until your lawyer says it's time to talk. And at the end of the day, you got to keep in mind that you're alive, right? You're breathing, and that's the most important thing. And you're not going to go away for life. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and every day is a new day. And I remember being in prison and knowing that I was just one day closer to seeing that open gate and being free. So don't give up, right? A lot of people are depressed, and I've seen, two people on my case committed suicide, and it's a disappointment because they weren't looking at much time. They're looking at the time these guys are looking, and you just got to stay strong because you got to remember you have a family, you have kids, and be strong for them. I told Matt Boyer when he went away, like, just be strong. Don't show weakness, because if you show weakness, it's going to make your wife sad. It's going to make your kids sad. You got to just stay strong. And at the end of the day, with the prison consultant and your lawyer, you guys are going to get through this.
It's interesting if they do plead and potentially go to a camp. I mean, when I read the charges and I see extortion, even if they don't plead to that, even referencing that in a probation report could compel the Bureau of Prisons to send them to a low security prison, right, and fence them in. So that probation report is very important. And in future videos, Owen has a media interview here in a few minutes, so we have to hop. But in future interviews, we'll talk about like what happens if one pleads guilty and proffers and cooperates, if another goes to trial. What does it look like to prepare for a probation interview or sentencing hearings? How do you get a higher or lower than guideline sentence? So there's a lot to take in. I do want to close with something that Owen touched on, which is if you did it, there is value in accepting responsibility and sharing lessons, which is how I'll close. In the documentary that Wahlberg produced on Amazon Prime, there is a clip of you speaking to students, right? Or kids over at
Kids.
playing football. Is it cathartic for you to help people? Because a lot of people would say you broke the law, don't talk about it, run from it, but you've addressed it head on. Is there value for you in sharing some of these lessons and just talking about the terrible decisions you made?
Yeah, no doubt. Like I tell people now, I can't make up for my mistakes, but I can help people in the future from going down the path I went down. Whether it's a kid in the inner city playing Pop Warner football, or it's an NBA player that's thinking about gambling on the next basketball game. I went down that path, and I'm telling you, prison's a place that you never want to go to. And just remember, if you've already been charged, know that accepting responsibility is a big break in that case. Whether that 3 points, as you know, Justin, is a lot of time on the federal guidelines, and you know there's a way to get through it, and with the right lawyer and consultant, you guys can get that number down, and it's a game of chess.
Now, before we go, can you tell everyone how they can get the book, maybe the documentary, and as we wrap up?
Yeah, so I tell people go on my web, californiakid.com, the same name as the book, the californiakid.com. You buy it on my website. I personalize it and sign it. And then obviously Amazon Prime did the Mark Wahlberg Unrealistic Ideas Cocaine Quarterback 3-part series on Amazon, and it's been in the top 10 the last 4 weeks in a row.
Also, your soft white underbelly, crushing it, dude.
I heard.
I recently did it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to hit those numbers, man. That is a phenomenal interview. When I put this link up, when I put the blog up on the website, along with the replay, I'll link to everything along with the soft white. It tells the story. I know you have your interview. I'm grateful that we did this quick random live video where we can get your insights. Thank you again for contributing.
No worries. Fight on.
Fight on. Fight on. Yes, very good.
Take care.
One sec. Okay, one sec.